What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Blerd Out. One Piece 1155 is out. Chapter is popping and banging. So we're going to talk about it. We're also going to talk about some seasonal since we didn't do that in the first episode of the season. Now, we're not going to waste any time. So, of course, if you have not caught up to the latest chapters or episodes, please know that there will be spoilers ahead.
Spoilers.
Okay, so we got One Piece chapter 1155, The Rocks Pirates, and just by that title, you know it's going to be a banger. There's no way it's not popping, and of course, the chapter is gas. Starting off, we have the cover of Shonen Jump, which One Piece dominates again. And for the cover, we have Luffy in the center, kind of just in his, what you'd call his base form. Basically, Fisherman Island fit, the fit that everyone's tired of. But we have the numbers in the background. So we have 2, 3, 4, and 5. And each one of these numbers has Luffy in that respective gear. So, 2 has second gear, 3 has third gear, 4 has gear fourth, and 5 has gear 5. And there are some smaller things in some of the background stuff, but Luffy takes up like 95% of the real estate on this cover. We also got a color spread. And normally I love color spreads. They're always fantastic. This one is popping. First off, the city, the area reminds me a lot of Delfino Plaza. If you ever played Super Mario Sunshine, that's the kind of vibes I'm getting from this. I can even hear the theme song, the music that plays with Delfino Plaza. I hear that here. It feels like such a good time. And the fits are clean. I like the theme. You have everyone trying to cross over this tall walkway across 2 buildings. And I appreciate that of all the people that are afraid, it's really just Usopp and Nami. Whereas you have Chopper, who's normally part of the weakling trio and usually is afraid along with these two. We know that Chopper routinely scaled Drum Island over a rope. Basically, he doesn't have any issues with heights. So this is something that's very chill for him. I appreciate that shows in the cover as well. But the way the colors pop in this color spread is just, it's so good. I really like this one. It doesn't seem like there's any hidden messages, although there is a cool little thing in the background where you see Luffy's wanted poster and it's him in gear 5, but it's him in gear 5 and his clothes aren't white. You can see him doing the laughing pose, he's covering his face, but you see the red of his shirt. So it's he's doing the gear 5 pose, but he's wearing his standard clothes and they haven't transformed. And to be fair, I think that's probably because the way that particular area works, it wouldn't look good if it was all white. The red makes it stand out to where it's not just blending in as one big blob. But yeah, 10 out of 10 color spread, absolutely love it. Into the chapter. So we have Loki talking with Rocks, Whitebeard, Stussy, and Shiki. And I didn't know who that was beforehand. I guessed it was probably Stussy. And it is Stussy, so that's good to know now. I was pretty sure because the only other person I was thinking was it's either Stussy or Big Mom, and it's not Big Mom. But Loki answers the questions that Rocks asked last chapter, which was that this is Elbaf, but Harold's not here. And because Loki calls Harold Pops, that kind of clues Rocks in oh, you're a son. Okay, well, we gonna do it like this. You're gonna go back and you're gonna tell somebody that Harold needs to get back here immediately. In fact, you can even tell him that you got hurt and he needs to come back and tend to you. And Loki, of course, being Loki, is what, excuse me? You tiny humans are just gonna show up and try and give me commands? Let alone expect my dad to come back? Nah, you don't do that here. And that's when we get a display of Rock's power, which is crazy because the first display we get is him mopping a child. But he takes out his sword and you can see the hockey charging up on it. Standard issue for the big guns. They got the hockey dripping off. But we do get a special note that Rox's swordsmanship was renowned very specifically for how it hit. So it really wasn't a cutting type attack that he used or that he'd used in general. It was a lot more blunt. They would often refer to it as something like a giant hammer or cannon fire. Basically, it was a massive shock instead of a massive cut. And I saw that, and the first thing that came to mind was that, Loki uses a hammer. And I'm pretty sure that Loki has used a few different weapons, but I'm wondering if Loki leans more towards a hammer or if that has any inspiration on why Loki fights the way he fights. Just specifically because they said something akin to a giant hammer, and I was like, giant hammer, where have we seen a giant hammer? But yeah, Rox attacks Loki, and it seems like that puts him out enough to bring Harold back because Harold does come rushing back. But before we get to that, we kind of go into a flashback in the flashback in the flashback where we see where Harold and Rox end up crossing paths, which is the Reverie. And they mentioned that they crossed paths before in the previous chapter, so they're kind of giving us a rundown of what happened here, and it starts off with someone having kidnapped 5 of the kings that attended the Reverie. Now, initially, they assume it's Harold. And Harold kind of just ended up in this position. He was being used as a scapegoat. He didn't really know what was going on. He just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. This is clearly something that Rox was behind, but the blame kind of fell on Harold. And in response to that, we actually get to see Emu. And Emu talks about how the lives of those kings cannot be used to extort Emu. Basically, the lives of those kings are meaningless in the grand scheme of things. So it's like, you got 5 kings? Cool. That's not gonna do anything to me. You can do whatever you want to those kings. And Emu's so chill about it. And then we pan down a little bit further, and it turns out that Rox is in the flower room with Emu. And the flower room is like this sacred place where we've only seen Emu and maybe like 2 other characters, both of which were Emu's servants. So like no one else enters this room but Emu, really. And Rox is just in here chilling, and he's just casually talking to Emu. And he acknowledges that, okay, so taking the kings doesn't really do anything to you, but it does throw the Holy Land in chaos. Which, I'll take that dub for now. And the narration is like, it covers a lot of what's happening in these different panels, like in these different sections of time. But it says that this incident will be the first and the last. So this is the first time someone has gotten to the flower room, and the last time someone has gotten to the flower room. And I can imagine that is, of the current time. Like up until now, this is the only time it's happened. And oddly enough, so Emu's in this room, Rox is in this room, and there's one other person in the room, and they have the same eyes as Gunko. Now, the hair isn't the same, but we have the same motif of like the eyes are different, and then we have the mouth covering. So it's like, is this a younger version of Gunko? Is this pre-God's Night Gunko? The only other theory I would have about who this is someone related to Nefertari Lily. So those are kind of my 2 theories. I'm leaning more towards the Gunko one because we're seeing those eyes, and I think that's a very specific thing to see, is that we see the eyes, we know that Gunko has those same eyes. So that's what I'm going with. It's probably Gunko. And I'm wondering if this is why Gunko's Emu form has long hair, because maybe that was like a previous iteration of Gunko. But we only get that one panel of her. The narration goes on to say that the man claimed to be a Davy Jonesian pirate, and I honestly don't know what that means. Davy Jonesian pirate. Like, as far as I would guess, it leaned more towards just like a harbinger of death, but I don't know how that fits into the narrative here. So I would like to see if they translate that differently. But it also says that he knew there was nothing he could do in that moment, so he withdrew with these words. Just wait, one day I'll be back. And he is staring down Emu hard. So he basically says, all right, I can't do anything now. I'll be back later. And what's crazy is that he just leaves. Like he intrudes on the Holy Land. And remember, this is the reverie where he kills an admiral. So he intrudes on the Holy Land, kills an admiral, makes it to the flower room, sees Emu, threatens Emu, and then leaves. And he doesn't get stopped. Like, there's no other admirals here. There's no fleet admiral. There's no Gorosei. There's no God's Knights. I don't know. And I know that Gorosei exists because we know that, Saturn existed in this time frame. So at the very least, one Gorosei existed, but we know that Gorosei exists here. We know that the admirals are here considering he killed one. And it's the Reverie, so they have most of their resources in the Holy Land. But the fact that they have all that and he still managed to get in, kill someone, get to the flower room, and then leave is insane. The incident was so insane that they literally covered it up. The same thing they did with God Valor is like, nah, it didn't happen. not real. And as Rox is leaving, we actually get to see who else has intruded, and of course it's Harold. He slipped in as a bodyguard to someone else, but essentially he got found out, and also he's being accused of being the one who kidnapped the 5 kings. So now he's in a hot situation. His entire body is set on fire, and I'm wondering if that's the ability of someone who's fighting him, or if that's just like cannon fire and being attacked. Like his entire body's on fire, and I would immediately go to like, the Mera no Mi. I would go to the Mago no Mi, someone with fire-based abilities attacking him. But we don't see anybody like that. We just see him on fire. So I'm guessing it's just normal cannon fire. The Celestial Dragons are of course being garbage, wanting him as a slave. They don't see any immediate threat to them outside of just like, hey, there's a giant here. Oh, he looks cool. I want that one. These are all idiots. And as they're moving, Harold and Rox end up crossing paths, and the first thing they'll do, and as they're both trying to leave, Rox and Harold end up crossing paths. Now, Rox sees it as like, okay, I bet you're the guy that they're blaming me for all the crimes on. Like, you did all this. And Rox just sees a giant. He's like, huh, why are you here? And then they clash. Like clearly Harold has a reason to attack. Rox is just like, oh, there's a giant here. And it's very possible that Rox just kind of saw the attack, whether it be like observation hockey, or he just saw Harold running up with malice and he countered. And they end up having this massive clash that blows everyone away within 5 kilometers. So anyone next to them when they clash just got blasted away. And it's a crazy panel because it shows the strength of these two characters in different ways, where we know that King Harold was like that. We know that he was built different. We also know that Rox was like that and built different. So these two characters clashing, it kind of shows that, yeah, they got that kind of power. Now, initially it looks like they do collide, but when they do the description of like, the blast pushes everyone away, it looks like we're having that Conqueror's hockey clash where the blades aren't touching. I would say until further notice, this is just a normal hockey clash and not a Conqueror's clash. But I'm sure we'll see more information on their different kinds of hockey down the road. What's cool is that they clash and they're immediately like, hey, okay, you all right? Like they both start laughing and Rox is like, hey, what's your name, big guy? We also get to see their laughs. I don't know if we've seen Harold's laugh since he's been in the flashback, but we have a Vohaha from Rox and then Barahaha from Harold. In typical One Piece tradition, we have unique laughs. I don't know if they have any correlation to the characters. A lot of times you'll see that the laughs have correlation to like the character, the Devil Fruit. So I'm wondering if Vohaha has an indication to anything, but of course, nothing to go off, and we don't even know if that's the proper translation. We'll have to see once the official drops. But they exchange names, and then Rox pretty much just ends up sitting on Harold and is like, hey, I'm Rox. You should attack the people because they're going to enslave you. And Harold is, kind of against that. Again, Harold is trying to make peace. The whole reason he's here is because he wants to ask questions about how to further relations between giants and, normal humans and other races. So he's trying to be peaceful. He's not trying to attack people. Rox, on the other hand, is trying to get out of here. Harold ends up asking Rox, basically, how do I get back to Elbaf? How do I get out of here? Where do I go? And Rox just points in directions like, all right, go there. Which leads for Harold to just jump off the side of the red line. And that's a very, very high jump. Now, I imagine he's jumping high enough and far enough to where when he lands down, he's probably going to land in water because there's like a coastline, but that's still an insane jump. Also, once he makes this jump, somewhere in that period of time, him and Rox separate. So like literally that jump happens and then they're separated because we move on to a different segment of time. The narration goes on to say that despite all efforts to save that admiral that Rox attacked, he didn't survive. And this is what kind of gave him his notorious title. And his bounty poster is looking crazy. I really like the fact that so he has like the design going around his eye where like there's liner going up, down, left and right. One of them kind of leads back directly into his hair, like so it goes from his eye to his hair. It's so clean. And then we move on to a little bit of time later and there is a ship carrying the holy tribute, carrying food, things like that. The supplies for the Holy Land. Rox ends up attacking that. So basically he was like, I need some money. I'm gonna take that. So he cleans out the ship with the money. He ends up destroying the gates of justice, which, if they're the same gates of justice that we see in this lobby, that's insane. It makes sense considering the way they described his swordsmanship, where basically it's really blunt, heavy attacks. I could see something like that destroying the gates, but still those gates are huge. So him destroying those, that's an insane feat. But basically he rolled out with that money to try and bump up his activities. He even started attacking other pirate ships. Basically he was like, all right, I need a lot of resources and I'm getting them from wherever I see them. Whether it be celestial dragons, navy, pirates, if you got what I need, I'm taking it. He even dipped into the tradition of Davy back fights. Yes, that's right, the Davy back fights have made it into the Rocks flashback. There's been a lot of talk about Davy back fights being one of the bigger things that might come back for like major characters, and it's been a theory for a while. It really hasn't had any traction. So to see it suddenly be confirmed here is crazy. Shout out to all the people that had that kind of theory. I'm sure they're looking at that and they're just like shaking their head back and forth like, I knew it. I knew it. But apparently that's how Rocks gained his giant crew, was through Davy back fights. The narration says that that's what he used to build his entire crew. And by that, I assume he used it to build everyone post the other three that he had with him. Because you see like the panel of Rocks talking to, again, Whitebeard, Shiki, and Stussy. So it's just these four. And he's telling them like, hey, they have an amazing guy. I can't wait till you see him. And the narration even goes on to say they had won several scoundrels before they even had a flag. So the fact that they used they, I think assumes that it's these four, and then they do Davy back fights, and that's how they got the rest of the people onto the crew. And eventually they cut back to where they make it to Elbaf. Now, because Loki got injured, Harold did in fact rush home. And we see another instance of Harold just being somewhat naive as a dad, because he's like, Loki, I know you're strong, but you can't just wander in the undead realm. And it's like, you don't question anything about Loki. Like, Loki has these bandages on his face. Loki just seems distant. He was in the underworld and got injured. And you're just like, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. You know better. And you're just like, leaves. That's all. He does not inquire about any of this stuff at all. Like, he's so aloof as a dad. It's terrifying. And we also get these thought bubbles from Loki where he's kind of surprised that Harold came back for him. And I didn't really see like I know Harold and Loki don't have the best relationship, mostly on Loki's side, because Harold kind of thinks he's just a kid and Loki just has resentment against the world. So for Harold to come back for him, he's like, that's not possible. People don't love me. They wouldn't do that for me. So he's having a hard time taking that in. Meanwhile, Harold ends up meeting up with Rocks. And he's not super happy about Rocks being here because like, you're a wanted criminal. Why are you here? Meanwhile, Rocks is just like, hey, my boy, welcome back. I've been waiting on you. And Rocks wants him to join the crew. He's kind of using the leverage that the government basically doesn't want to mess with the giants as a reason for him to join the crew. Like, hey, the government's kind of stopping you from doing what you want to do. So why not go against them? Why not join me and go against your enemies? And Harold's kind of like, man, if I do that, it's going to mess up all the other relations I've made. Rocks naturally doesn't care about any of that. He's like, man, forget all that. If they're just going to stop you from reaching what you want, you might as well stop them. Basically, get yours before they get you. That's what he's trying to say. And in this panel where we have Rocks and Harold talking, you see a giant collection of Rocks pirates, some of which we've been introduced to before, some of which are completely new. So like just in the panel alone, you see Rocks, you see Shiki, Stussy, Whitebeard, and then you see Shang-Chi, you see Ochako, and then you see a new guy who's going to be introduced a little bit later on. But we've been introduced to these characters way back when they were talking about the Rocks pirates in the Ultimate Chapter, 957, I think. We got introduced to a lot of those names way back then. Harold keeps trying to push that Elbaf isn't like that anymore. They're not trying to hunt down people. They're trying to be peaceful. And Rocks is like, nah, that don't make no sense. Y'all bloodthirsty, y'all warriors. There's no reason y'all should be out here being peaceful. Meanwhile, Whitebeard just in the background like, hey, y'all chill out. Like, there's no reason for you to be arguing. You just chill and eat the food. And this prompts Harold to say that, basically to his crew, hey, if you guys follow Rocks, you're just going to lead to ruin. Like, why are you following him? In which they all respond, basically, they're not following him. They're kind of just using him for their own goals, which we know the Rock's pirates are kind of made off that premise of everyone kind of has a goal and they're on the Rock's pirates to achieve that goal and not necessarily to achieve Rox's goal. And this is where we get introduced to a bunch of different Rock's pirates. So we have Shiki, who I guess was known as Shiki the Wicked before he was the Golden Lion. And he's just like, yeah, Rox is an idiot. We're not following him. We just out here for ourselves, trying to get some money, trying to get paid. We wouldn't even care if Rox died. And then you have Stussy, who is the tech bandit, later on Buckingham Stussy, which would explain her connections to Vegapunk and all the kind of the scientific motifs around her. And she's like, well, I like his plans though. So I'm not 100% against following him because his plans are helping me get what I need. And then we get introduced to a new character of the Rock's Pirates, which is Don Marlon. And I guess he's a gangster from West Blue. And he starts talking about Hachinosu. And basically, they call it the Isle of Exiles. That's where everyone dumps their quote unquote trash and or, worst criminals. It's like an unregulated impel down. And this continues on with Edward Newgate, who we know is Whitebeard, talking about it's meant to be a barren island with no food, no resources. All you can do is wait for death there. And then we cut to Ochaku, who we know takes over Hachinosu and then who eventually gets beaten by Blackbeard when he takes over Hachinosu, who says that the survivors of the island start banding together and then they basically started attacking people who would come to the island. And then we cut to Wang Chi, who is known as the smuggler, who says that, believe it or not, the island has a massive gold deposit. So they ended up finding out about that. A bunch of criminals band together, took the island for themselves, took the treasure, which, why is there a massive gold deposit on the island where you're storing criminals? Like, I guess I'm reading it as gold was being stored there. It very well could just be like that island had a gold mine on it and they didn't know. But if the fact that they had gold on there, just didn't know about it, and all these criminals were just sitting on gold mine. But basically, anyone that goes near that island gets attacked by all the criminals that are still there. They basically run you pockets, whether you're a criminal yourself, whether you're Navy, whether you're a civilian, they run you pockets. So what Rox did is he cut a deal. He said, we will take that island back for you if you pay us. Now, it being Rox, he's like, yeah, so they're going to pay us. We're going to take the island. We're going to take their money. And then we're not giving them any of this back. So basically, they're just going to cut and run. Like, the island will be ours. The money will be ours. And then F the government. And basically, his goal is to turn Hachinosu into what it is today, which is a pirate's paradise. He then starts this big monologue where he talks about how this is basically the prologue to his life. This is the big start. He's going to use that island as a base. He's going to start by crushing the Navy. He's going to move to the Holy Land. And then eventually he's going to take over the entire world. Sekai. That's his goal. That's his ambition. And Harold, who's finally started eating at this point, like they were arguing and having like a bad time before. Harold's just chilling to eat now, which is funny. But he's like, you're trying to pick a fight with the entire planet. Like, you're doing too much. And Rox is like, bet, so what? Someone's got to do it. He then says, there is no such thing as power that lasts forever. Join me, Harold. If we team up, we'll be unstoppable. And as far as the power that lasts forever, that clearly reminds me of the Doflamingo quote where he said that power fades quickly. And Doflamingo said it also in relation to the world government and, kind of probably Emu. So there's something here about a power that's being held by the world government that is fading quickly. And as more people catch on, more people sniff that out, they're trying to make a move and take that power for themselves. Now, as this is all happening, we have Loki in the background who's just been listening to the entire conversation. And he's just taken back by it. He hears everything that Rox is saying, and he's just like, that's amazing. I admire that man. And that's this is like the first time we see Loki kind of have a true reaction to something. So where he's smiling, but he's also crying. He basically finds new meaning in what Rox is saying here. And this is why he has that admiration for Rox that we see in some of the chapters beforehand, and why he's talking about Rox when he's talking to Luffy. Now, after this meeting between Rox and Harold, 4 years pass, and eventually Rox's plan comes to fruition. Now, 4 years past would be 44 years behind the present time. If I'm doing the math correctly, this is still about 4 years before the God Valley incident. So my guess is that this is his takeover of Hachinosu, because we have all the pirate ships heading towards Hachinosu. And the final panel is him saying set sail. I would imagine if he's saying set sail, it would be away from Hachinosu, not towards it. And because Hachinosu is the thing in panel right now, and because we are not in the time period where God Valley should be happening quite yet, I have to make the assumption that this is his takeover of Hachinosu. But this is basically where the chapter ends. It says that he would send shockwaves throughout the entire world, and this is sending more shockwaves apparently, because we know he already did that when he killed the admiral and kind of got his first bounty. So he's sending more shockwaves. And we also know that God Valley was pretty much hushed up, so that wouldn't really, shock anything, because no one should know about that incident. So this is probably the takeover of Hachinosu that we're going to go into in the next chapter. Unfortunately, we do have a break next week, so the gas is going to be on the low for a little bit, but these chapters have been hidden. What I imagine is that we're going to go through the Hachinosu takeover, and then we're also going to get God Valley. I think we're going to get God Valley in this flashback, and I'm really excited for that. For it being such a big event, for so many things happening in God Valley. I mean, I'm talking about like Kaido lore. I'm talking about God Knight lore. They could even do like more Kuma lore in this. Like, I don't think there's too much for them to expand on Kuma, but there's so many things that connect to God Valley that I'm guessing we're going to see in these upcoming chapters. So yeah, fire chapter, absolutely loved it. Can't wait for the next one. Rox has been a crazy good character. He's only been what is this, 2 chapters he's been in? He already has a crazy amount of aura. He's already in everyone's like top 10 of all time. He's already outbeaten, like the amount of discussions on how Rox is. I've even heard talks of like Rox just being just a better pirate than Roger. Like Rox is just the top pirate pretty much. And I'm not against it. Like the way Rox is moving, I can see that. But that is it for the chapter. So let's talk about the seasonals a little bit before we head out. Now, for this season, we have a lot of like expected top hitters as far as seasonals go. We got Dandadan. I think we have Sakamoto Days. Like we have a lot of kind of mainstream ones coming out. I really haven't hit any of those quite yet. I'm a little behind on the mainstream ones. I'm kind of trying to check out some of these others. There's a couple of romances that I'm trying to watch first that I'm really interested in. One of them is The Flower That Blooms With Dignity. I want to see what that one's about. I think that's the highest rated anime of the season right now, so I'm definitely going to check that out. Rascal Does Not Dream of Santa Claus. I'm probably going to check that out, just not super soon. Dress Up Darling is out, which I know I am going to watch at some point. I love the first season, so I'm knowing I love the second season. There's Gachiakuta, which I've watched the first 2 episodes of. That's been pretty cool so far. I'm liking it. There's Secrets of the Silent Witch, which I haven't watched yet, but I'm intrigued by, so I'm gonna check that out. And then, there's the anime that's kind of more just, watch and have fun, which is, one is Cletus. I like Cletus. I'm vibing with that story so far. I think that's the one I like the most of the seasons I've watched so far. There's The Water Magician, which is just about a kid who gets reborn into a world as a water magician, and he's just really good at it. Like, kind of generic isekai title, but I like my isekais. I watched episode 1 of Detectives These Days Are Crazy, which I liked. It was very funny. Like the comedy in that one is really good. So I'm probably gonna hop back into that one once a few more episodes come out. I think I'm gonna wait for some of these to get a few episodes so I can binge through them and kind of really get a feel for them. And I'm also watching New Saga, which is kind of an isekai. Dude gets sent back 4 years into his own time, so it's not like a new world, it's the same world, just he's sent back 4 years to his own time, and he's kind of got to redo everything he just did to fight the demon lord, but do it without everyone dying. So a lot of good stuff coming out here. Like I said, a lot of the mainstream stuff is really cool. Also, Grand Blue has a season 2, which I'm gonna have to watch because I love the first season. First season was crazy good, so I'm gonna check out the second season of that as well. A lot of good stuff. I can't wait to kind of really dive into it and just have fun with some of these. As always, I'll keep you updated here on the ones I'm liking, the ones I'm not liking, and then let me know what you're watching this season. That's going to do it for this episode. As always, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.